Do you think a badge makes you a god? Do you believe you can look at a man, judge the colour of his skin, and decide his fate? Officer Mason Crowe thought so. He saw a beat-up truck and a black man at a cheap motel and believed he had found an easy target. He never saw the classified history. He never saw the medals locked away in a safe in Virginia. When Crowe tightened those cuffs, he thought victory was his. But when the suspect met his gaze and whispered, "Call my SEAL team," he was not asking for rescue. He was delivering a warning. And when the sky filled with the thunder of rotors, Officer Crowe realized too late that he had arrested the wrong legend. The rain in Jericho County never washed anything clean. It only made the grime slicker underfoot. Late at night, a rusted Ford F-150 pulled into the gravel lot of the Starlight Motel. The neon sign flickered and buzzed. The letter N burned out, so the sign read, "Only Starlight Hotel." The man behind the wheel killed the engine and sat for a moment, listening to the rain drum against the roof and the engine tick as it cooled. Khalil Stone took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of wet pine and old upholstery. He stood 6 feet 4 inches tall, with shoulders that filled the width of the driver's seat and hands that looked as though they could crush stone. But his eyes carried the weight of too many battles. He had not come here for trouble. He had come for a funeral. His old petty officer, a young man named Jasper Reed from the teams, had overdosed in this forgotten town. Khalil had driven a long way to make sure Jasper's mother had enough money for a proper burial and to pay his respects in person. He wore a simple grey hoodie, faded jeans and work boots. To anyone passing by, he looked like a drifter or a labourer between jobs. That was exactly what Officer Mason Crowe saw. Crowe sat in his patrol cruiser across the street, tucked into the shadows of a closed gas station. He had been on the force for several years and carried a reputation that balanced between proactive and deeply problematic. He polished his badge until it shone, yet he had long forgotten the oath that came with it. "Dispatch, this is Unit 4 Alpha," Crowe said into his radio, eyes narrowing as he watched Khalil step out of the truck. "I've got a suspicious vehicle at the Starlight. Out-of-state plates. Subject is a large black male. Looks agitated. 10-4 Alpha. Any specific probable cause?" the dispatcher asked, her voice flat with boredom. "Vehicle matches the description of a truck. Involved in suspicious drug activity. Reported last week." Crowe lied smoothly. He had no such report. He had a quota to meet and a bias he wore like a second skin. "I'm going to initiate a consensual contact." Crowe did not wait for a reply. He threw the cruiser into drive, tires crunching over the wet asphalt as he rolled across the street without turning on his lights. He wanted the element of surprise. Inside room 104, Khalil had just set his duffel bag on the stained carpet. The room smelled of mildew and lemon polish. He pulled out his wallet and looked at the photograph of his squad. Jasper smiled from the back row. Khalil rubbed his thumb over the image as grief washed through him. He unclipped his concealed carry holster. He held a permit valid in all 50 states because of his status, though he rarely showed it. He placed his Sig Sauer per 226 on the nightstand beside his badge, buried deep inside a leather wallet he had not opened in months. He only wanted to sleep. Bang, bang, bang. The knock rattled the hollow door. Khalil froze. He was not expecting anyone. He checked the peephole. A distorted view showed a uniform, a buzz cut, and a jaw set in arrogance. Khalil opened the door a crack, keeping the chain on. "Can I help you, officer?" Crow pushed against the door, testing the chain. "Open the door fully, sir. We need to have a chat." "About what?" Khalil asked, his voice a low rumble. He kept his hands visible on the door frame. He knew the drill. He knew the statistics. "We've had reports of drug trafficking in this motel involving a truck like yours," Crow said, his hand resting on his holster. "I need to check your ID and search the vehicle." Khalil sighed. "Officer, I just arrived. I'm here for a funeral. My truck is clean. I'm not consenting to a search." Crow's face flushed. He was not used to hearing no in Jericho County. No was usually followed by a night in the drunk tank. "I smell marijuana coming from the room," Crow said, the lie slipping out more easily than the truth ever did. "That gives me probable cause. Open the damn door, or I'll kick it in for obstruction." Khalil stared at him. He did not smoke. He did not drink. His body was a temple built for war. But he knew that in this moment, the truth meant nothing to Mason Crow. "I'm going to close the door to take off the chain," Khalil said calmly. "Do not shoot." He closed it, slid the chain free, and opened the door wide. Crow stormed in, rain blowing in behind him. He did not look for drugs. He got right in Khalil's face, trying to assert dominance over a man who had stared down warlords in the Hindu Kush. "Turn around, hands behind your back." "Am I under arrest?" Khalil asked, not moving. "You are now," Crow sneered, grabbing Khalil's wrist. "Resisting an officer, disorderly conduct, and whatever else I find in this dump." Khalil had not flinched. He calculated exactly how he could disarm Crow, break his arm, and have him on the floor before the radio hit the carpet. But he also knew the headlines that would follow. "Crazed veteran attacks hero cop." He could not do that to Jasper's memory. He could not do that to the team's. So Khalil Stone, Master Chief Special Warfare Operator retired, turned around. "You're making a mistake," he said softly, as the cold steel of the handcuffs bit into his wrists. "The only mistake," Crow grunted, tightening them painfully, "was you coming into my town." The rain had grown heavier, turning the parking lot into a shallow lake. Crow marched Khalil out of the room and shoved him toward the cruiser. A few motel guests had stepped onto the balcony, a trucker in a wife-beater, a young couple holding each other. They watched in silence, phones raised and recording. Crow loved an audience. He puffed out his chest. "See, folks, just keeping the streets safe. Another dealer off the board." Khalil was shoved into the back of the cruiser. The hard plastic seat cramped his large frame. He watched through the plexiglass as Crow went back into room 104 and tore the place apart. Crow returned holding Khalil's wallet and the Sig Sauer in an evidence bag, looking triumphant. "Got you," Crow said, sliding into the front seat. "Unregistered firearm. That's a felony." "It's registered," Khalil said from the back, his voice eerily calm. "Check the wallet behind the driver's license." Crow scoffed. He flipped the wallet open and glanced at the ID. Khalil Stone. Address, Virginia Beach. He ignored the flap behind the license. He did not care. He threw the wallet onto the dashboard. "You're done, Stone. I'm taking you in. You'll be lucky if you see a judge for quite some time." Crow started the car. "Officer," Khalil said, "I have a phone call. I'm entitled to one phone call." "You get a call when we get to the station," Crow laughed. "No," Khalil said. The tone of his voice changed. It was no longer the voice of a suspect. It was the voice of command. It cut through the hum of the engine and the sound of the rain. You are detaining a Tier 1 asset on a federal timeline. If I do not check in soon, a protocol you do not understand will be initiated. Give me my phone. Crow slammed on the brakes before they even left the lot. He turned around, red-faced. Who do you think you are? John Rambo? You're a nobody with a gun in a cheap motel. My name is Master Chief Khalil Stone, he said, enunciating every syllable. And I am asking you, for the safety of your career in this precinct, to let me make a call. Crow stared at him. There was something in Khalil's eyes, a cold, shark-like stillness that made the hair on Crow's arms stand up. Doubt flickered for a fraction of a second, but Crow's ego crushed it. Shut up, Crow muttered, but he did not drive away. He picked up the radio. Dispatch, 4 Alpha, bringing one in. He's talking crazy, claims to be military. 4 Alpha, copy. Do you want me to run his service record? Yeah, run it. Khalil Stone. Crow waited, smirking at Khalil in the rearview mirror. We'll see who you are in a second. Silence stretched. Then the radio crackled, but the voice was not the bored dispatcher. It was Sheriff Cole Ramsey, and he sounded breathless. 4 Alpha, this is Sheriff Ramsey. What is your location? I'm at the Starlight, Sheriff. Just wrapped up a... Listen to me very carefully. The sheriff's voice was tight, trembling. Did you arrest a Khalil Stone? Yes, sir. Caught him with a weapon and... Stop! The sheriff screamed. Do not move. Do not transport him. Unhandcuff him immediately. Crow blinked, confused. Sheriff, he's got a gun. He's agitated. I think he's high. Miller, I just got a call from the Pentagon. That man is not a suspect. He is... Just let him go. I'm on my way. Crow looked back at Khalil. Khalil had not moved. He simply watched Crow with that same terrifying patience. Pentagon, Crow whispered to himself. He looked at the wallet on the dashboard. His hand shaking slightly, he reached out and flipped the leather flap behind the license. A badge gleamed back at him. It was not a police badge. It was a heavy gold trident set against a dark blue background. Below it was a card that read, Department of the Navy, Special Warfare Development Group, Security Clearance, Yankee White. Crow felt his stomach drop through the floorboard. I told you, Khalil said. Now hand me my phone. I need to make a call. Crow, pale as a sheet, reached back through the partition and handed over the phone, fingers trembling. Khalil took it. He did not call a lawyer. He did not call the sheriff. He dialed a number from memory. It rang once. Stone? A voice answered instantly, sharp and alert. It's me, Khalil said. I've been detained by local law enforcement in Jericho County. Hostile interaction. I'm going to miss the check-in window. There was a pause. Then the voice, Commander Sophia Lang, head of his old unit, spoke. Are you safe for now? The officer is unstable. Understood, Lang said. You said to call the team before you left, if things went south. Is this that call? Khalil looked at Crow, whose eyes were wide with panic in the front seat. Yes, call the team. Officer Mason Crow sat in the driver's seat of his cruiser, hands gripping the steering wheel so hard his knuckles turned the colour of old bone. The rain was no longer a drizzle. It was a deluge hammering against the roof like thousands of tiny fists. Inside the car, the air was thick with the smell of wet wool and fear. Behind the plexiglass partition, Khalil Stone sat in silence. He had not spoken since he made the call. He did not need to. He simply leaned his head back against the seat, closed his eyes, and waited. His breathing was slow and rhythmic, a sharp contrast to Crow's jagged, shallow gasps. "You think you're scaring me?" Crow muttered, though his voice lacked any real bite. It was a reflex, a desperate attempt to reclaim the power slipping through his fingers like sand. "You make a call to somebody in the service, think that gets you out of a felony? This is Jericho County, pal. My county." Khalil opened one eye. It was a cold, dark abyss. "It's not your county anymore, officer. It's a landing zone." Before Crow could reply, blue and red lights exploded in the rear-view mirror. Sheriff Cole Ramsey's SUV screeched into the lot, fishtailing on the wet gravel before slamming to a halt inches from Crow's bumper. The sheriff burst out of his vehicle, ignoring the rain soaking his uniform. He was a heavy-set man in his 50s, usually composed, but tonight his face was pale and his eyes wide with a terror Crow had never seen. Ramsey did not walk. He ran, slipping in the mud, banging his fist on Crow's window. "Unlock it, Crow! Unlock the damn door!" Crow fumbled with the switch. The locks clicked open. Ramsey wrenched the door open and grabbed Crow by the collar. "What did you do?" he hissed, spit flying. "I told you to stand down. Did you process him? Did you put him in the system?" I was just taking him in," Crow stammered, shrinking back. "Sheriff, he's got an unregistered weapon. He's resisting. He's got some fake badge in his wallet." "Fake?" Ramsey laughed, a high, manic sound. He let go of Crow and looked into the back seat. He saw Khalil Stone. He saw the handcuffs. Ramsey looked as though he might vomit. "That's not a fake badge, you idiot," Ramsey whispered. "I just got off the phone with the Department of Defense. Do you know who that man is? That is Master Chief Khalil Stone. He was part of the unit that took down the Jamal insurgent cell. He has a presidential unit citation. He is untouchable, Crow, and you have him in cuffs like a common thief." Crow looked back at Khalil. The big man watched them, expression unreadable. "So what?" Crow said, trying to find his bravado. "He broke the law in my town. Nobody's above the law." "You don't get it," Ramsey said, wiping rain from his face. "They aren't sending a lawyer, Mason. They told me to clear the airspace. Do you know what that means?" Crow frowned. "Airspace?" Then he heard it. It started as a low thrumming, a vibration that rattled the loose change in the cruiser's cup holder. It grew louder, a rhythmic thwop-thwop that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The rain patterns on the windshield began to dance, erratic and violent. Crow looked up. The night sky, previously a void of black clouds, was suddenly pierced by blinding white spotlights. 1, 2, 4. A massive downdraft hit the parking lot, flattening the grass and sending trash cans skittering across the pavement. The roar was deafening now, the scream of turbine engines drowning out the storm. "My God," Ramsey whispered. 2 MH-60 M. Black Hawk helicopters, painted matte black with no reflective markings, hovered just 50 feet above the motel. The sheer power of the machines shook the ground. Ropes dropped from the side doors, uncoiling like snakes. "What is this?" Crow screamed, covering his ears. "Call state troopers! Call backup!" "Shut up!" Ramsey yelled back. "Don't you dare touch that radio." Fast roping down with terrifying speed were figures clad in full tactical gear, multicam uniforms, quad-lens night vision goggles flipped up on their helmets, suppressed HK-4 .16 rifles strapped to their chests. They did not move like police. They moved like water, fluid, unstoppable, synchronized. Within seconds, 12 operators hit the ground. They fanned out in a perfect perimeter, weapons raised but not pointed, securing the corners of the parking lot and isolating the 2 police vehicles. Crow reached for his sidearm, a reflex of pure panic. Crack! A laser sight, green and unblinking, appeared directly on Crow's chest, then another on his forehead, then a third on his hand. "Hands!" a voice boomed over a loudspeaker from the lead helicopter. "Driver of the police cruiser, remove your hand from the weapon. Step out of the vehicle now." Crow froze. He looked at the laser dots dancing on his uniform. He looked at the operators on the ground, faceless behind their gear, looking like reapers sent to collect a soul. "Do it, Mason," Ramsey screamed. "Don't die for your ego." Crow slowly, agonizingly lifted his hands. He opened the door with his elbow and stepped out into the rain. The wind from the rotors nearly knocked him over. A man walked through the perimeter of operators. He wore no helmet, only a simple tactical cap and a headset. He had a beard greying at the tips and a scar running down his left cheek. This was Lieutenant Commander Gideon Holt. He walked straight past Crow as if the officer did not exist. He walked past the sheriff. He went directly to the rear passenger door of the cruiser and opened it. "Master Chief," Holt said, his voice calm amid the chaos. "Apologies for the delay. Weather was a bit soupy over the ridge." Khalil turned so his handcuffed hands were visible. "Good to see you, Gideon. You made good time." Holt's eyes dropped to the handcuffs. The playful look vanished from his face, replaced by a cold, hard rage that seemed to lower the temperature of the parking lot by 10 degrees. He reached into his vest, pulled out a pair of heavy-duty bolt cutters, and snapped the chain of the cuffs with a single, powerful crunch. He did not even ask for the key. Khalil rubbed his wrists and stepped out of the car, towering over everyone. Holt turned slowly to face Officer Crow. "Who put the bracelets on him?" Holt asked. He did not shout. He did not need to. Sheriff Ramsey pointed a trembling finger at Crow. "He did. Officer Crow. I tried to stop him." Holt walked over to Crow and stood inches from the officer's face. Crow was shaking uncontrollably now, the reality of his situation crashing down on him. "You arrested Khalil Stone," Holt said, voice flat. "Do you know who you're looking at? You're looking at the man who carried 3 of my guys out of a burning building in Fallujah while taking fire. You're looking at a man who has saved more American lives in a week than you will meet in your entire lifetime." I suspected drugs," Crow squeaked. "Probable cause? Drugs." Holt laughed, a harsh bark. "We just ran a spectral analysis on your cruiser and the suspect vehicle from the air. The only narcotics trace in this immediate vicinity is coming from your trunk. Officer, want to explain that?" Crow's knees buckled. The parking lot of the Starlight Motel had transformed into a forward operating base. The Black Hawks had set down in the adjacent field, rotors slowly spinning down. Motel guests watched from their windows, phones recording everything. This was going viral before the sun rose. Khalil Stone stood by the hood of his truck, holding a bottle of water one of the operators had given him. He watched as Officer Crow was systematically dismantled, not physically, but existentially. Sheriff Ramsey was on the phone, likely with the governor, judging by the stream of "yes, sir," and I understand, sir. But the real nightmare for Crow was just arriving. A black government SUV with diplomatic plates tore into the lot, bypassing the hastily set-up police barricade. Out stepped a woman in a sharp trench coat holding a briefcase. She had short, severe hair and glasses that magnified the intensity of her glare. This was Captain Lila Quinn, JAG Corps, Judge Advocate General. She was the legal shark the Navy sent when they wanted to leave no survivors. She walked straight to Khalil. Master Chief, are you injured? Bruised wrists, bruised ego, Khalil replied with a faint smile. I'm fine, Captain. Good, Quinn said, turning on her heel to face Crow and Ramsey. She opened her briefcase on the hood of the sheriff's car, oblivious to the rain. Officer Mason Crow, badge number 4922. 3 prior complaints of excessive force, all dismissed by internal affairs. 2 complaints of racial profiling, settled out of court with taxpayer money. Crow, now leaning against his cruiser for support, looked up. How do you have that? I have everything, Quinn said without looking up. We are the United States government, Officer Crow. When you detained a Tier 1 asset without cause, you authorized us to look into your life with a microscope. And frankly, it's disgusting. She pulled out a plastic bag containing a small sealed packet. My team swept your cruiser. We found this under the spare tire in your trunk. 2 ounces of confiscated methamphetamine that was never logged into evidence. You were planning to plant this, weren't you? Or maybe sell it. Crow's face went grey. That's not mine. I found it earlier. I was going to log it. The timestamps on your dash cam, which we have already remotely downloaded, show you confiscated this previously, Quinn said. Possession of a controlled substance, intent to distribute, official misconduct, kidnapping, assault on a federal agent. She looked at the sheriff. Sheriff Ramsey, I suggest you arrest your deputy immediately. If you don't, I will have the MPs do it, and they are far less gentle. Sheriff Ramsey did not hesitate. He pulled his own handcuffs from his belt, the same cuffs Crow had used on so many innocent people, and walked over to his deputy. Turn around, Mason, Ramsey said, voice heavy with disappointment and fear. Cole, come on, Crow pleaded, tears mixing with the rain on his face. It's me. We play poker on Fridays. Don't do this. You did this, Ramsey said, snapping the cuffs on. You targeted the wrong man. You brought the wrath of God down on my department. As Crow was shoved into the back of the sheriff's SUV, Khalil walked over. The operators parted to let him through. Khalil leaned down to the window, looking at Crow through the glass. Crow looked back, broken. The arrogance was gone. The bully was gone. All that remained was a scared little man who had realized too late that the badge did not make him a king. See? Khalil said softly, voice muffled by the glass. I was here for a funeral. I just wanted to pay my respects. Khalil stood up and tapped the roof of the car. Take him away. But the night was not over. As the sheriff's car pulled away, another vehicle arrived. A news van from the state capital. Then another. The story was out. Navy SEAL hero arrested by corrupt cop. The headlines were already being written. Captain Lila Quinn walked up to Khalil. Master Chief, we have a situation. The local DA is trying to save face. He's claiming you resisted arrest and that the search was legal. He wants to drag this out. Khalil sighed. I don't have time for court, Captain. I have to bury Jasper soon. You won't have to go to court. Gideon Holt interrupted, walking up with a satellite phone in his hand. "We just got a call from the governor, and he's got the president on the other line. Seems the commander-in-chief isn't too happy about one of his SEALs being harassed on U.S. soil." Holt handed the phone to Khalil. "He wants to speak to you." Khalil took the phone. "Mr. President." He listened for a moment, then nodded. "Thank you, sir." "Yes, sir. I'll be there." He handed the phone back to Holt. "What did he say?" Quinn asked. "He said the charges are dropped with prejudice," Khalil said. "And he said he's sending an FBI task force to audit the entire Jericho County Police Department starting tomorrow morning." Khalil looked at the flashing lights of the police cruisers, the embarrassed deputies standing in the rain, and the Black Hawks spooling up their engines. "Justice is coming," he said, "but first I have a funeral to attend." "We're coming with you," Holt said. "Jasper was one of us. We don't let a brother walk alone." "But the funeral," Khalil hesitated. "It's a poor family. They can't afford much." "They were going to pay for it." "But," Holt smiled. "Chief, look behind the second chopper." Khalil looked. Emerging from the darkness of the field were 4 more men carrying a casket. It was not a cheap wooden box. It was polished mahogany with silver handles, draped in a pristine American flag. "We brought him home," Holt said, "and we brought the checkbook. The teams take care of their own." Khalil felt a lump rise in his throat. He had faced torture, war, and death without blinking. But seeing his brothers standing there, ready to honor the fallen kid he had tried to save, that broke him. He nodded, unable to speak. "Let's move out," Holt ordered. "Convoy formation. We're escorting the chief to the church." As the convoy of military SUVs and Black Hawks prepared to leave, the remaining Jericho County police officers stood in the rain, watching in awe and shame. They had thought they were the power in this town. They had thought they could push people around because they wore a badge. They had learned a hard lesson that night. There are wolves, there are sheepdogs, and then there are the dragons. And you never, ever wake the dragon. The storm had passed, leaving the morning sky a bruised purple that slowly bled into a pale, clean blue. The convoy left the Starlight Motel as dawn broke. It was a sight the residents of Jericho County had never seen and would never forget. Leading the pack was Khalil's rusted Ford F-150, now flanked by 2 matte black SUVs with government plates. Behind them, the massive transport truck carrying the remains of Petty Officer Second Class Jasper Reed rumbled solemnly. Overhead, one of the Black Hawks flew a low, slow circle, a guardian angel watching over the procession. They drove away from the highway, deeper into the hollows, the part of town the police usually ignored unless they were looking to meet a quota. The houses here were small, sided with peeling clapboard, sitting on overgrown lots. When the convoy pulled up to the Mount Zion Baptist Church, the engine noise drew people out of their homes. It was not fear this time. It was awe. The church was a modest structure, its white paint greying with age, the steeple slightly listing to the left, but the grounds were swept clean. Standing on the front steps was Mira Reed, Jasper's mother. She wore a black dress that had seen too many funerals, her hands clutching a damp handkerchief. Khalil stepped out of his truck. He had changed. Gone was the grey hoodie. He now wore his dress blues, the fabric crisp, his chest heavy with ribbons, the silver star, the bronze star, with V device, the purple heart. The gold trident shone like a beacon above his left pocket. He walked up the path, gravel crunching under his polished shoes. Commander Gideon Holt and 6 other operators, also in dress blues, fell in behind him. They moved with a synchronized grace that made the local deputies, watching from a distance, look like children playing dress-up. Khalil stopped in front of Mira. He towered over her, but he bowed his head low. "Mrs. Reed," he said, voice thick with emotion, "I am Master Chief Khalil Stone. I was Jasper's team leader." Mira looked up at him, eyes swimming with tears. "He spoke of you. He called you Big Brother. He said you saved him more times than he could count." "He saved me, ma'am," Khalil corrected gently. "He was the best of us." Khalil signaled to the team. The operators moved to the transport truck. With practiced reverence, they lifted the mahogany casket draped in the American flag. The silence in the churchyard was absolute. Even the birds seemed to pause. They carried Jasper inside. The service was not the quick, lonely affair Mira had feared she would have to arrange with her meagre savings. It was a warrior's send-off. The church filled to capacity, not just with family, but with the SEALs, the JAG officers, and the FBI agents who had arrived that morning. The back pews were filled with locals who had heard the rumors. "The Navy is here. They arrested Crow. They're cleaning house." During the eulogy, Khalil took the pulpit. He gripped the wood, knuckles white. "Jasper Reed did not die of an overdose," he announced. The murmurs in the crowd ceased instantly. "The coroner's report, which we had an independent federal examiner review, confirms it. There were no recreational drugs in his system. There was a lethal dose of fentanyl administered forcibly. He didn't slip. He was murdered." A gasp tore through the room. Mira let out a sob. "He was murdered," Khalil continued, eyes scanning the room and landing on the few local deputies standing nervously by the door, "because he came back home and saw something he wasn't supposed to see. He saw a pipeline of poison running through this county, protected by a badge." Khalil looked directly at Mira. "We didn't just come to bury him, Mrs. Reed. We came to finish his mission." As the service ended, the team carried the casket to the graveside. The air was still. "Present arms," Holt barked. 7 rifles snapped up. Crack, crack, crack. The 3-volley salute echoed off the distant hills. Then the bugle player, a young sailor brought in from the base, played taps. The haunting notes drifted over the wet grass, heavy with sorrow. Khalil accepted the folded flag from the chaplain. He knelt on one knee in the mud, ruining his dress trousers, and held the triangle of blue and stars out to Mira. "On behalf of the President of the United States Navy, and a grateful nation," he recited, voice cracking on the last word, "please accept this flag as a symbol of our appreciation for your son's honorable and faithful service." Mira took the flag, pressing it to her chest. Khalil then did something not in the manual. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his own trident pin, the one he had worn on his first deployment. He pressed it into her hand. "He earned this," Khalil whispered. As the team walked back to the vehicles, Captain Lila Quinn approached Khalil, face grim. "You were right about the toxicology," she said quietly, "and we found the link. The fentanyl that killed Jasper has the same chemical signature as the batch we found in Officer Crow's trunk." Khalil stopped. He looked back at the fresh grave. "Crow didn't just profile me," he said, the realization turning his blood to ice. He recognized my truck. He knew Jasper drove a Ford like that. He thought I was Jasper coming back, or a friend coming to ask questions. He was trying to clean up a loose end. Quinn nodded. Instead, he tugged on a thread that's going to unravel the whole state. Khalil opened his truck door. "Get the indictment ready, Captain. I want to look him in the eye when you read it." Sometime later, the federal courthouse in the state capital was a fortress of glass and steel, a stark contrast to the rotting wood of the Starlight Motel. The air conditioning hummed, filtering out the summer heat. But inside courtroom 4B, the atmosphere was suffocating. The United States versus Mason Crowe. The charges had mutated. It was no longer just unlawful arrest or possession. The indictment list was terrifying. Deprivation of rights under colour of law, resulting in death, conspiracy to distribute controlled substances, obstruction of justice, first-degree murder. Mason Crowe sat at the defendant's table. He looked smaller than he had that night in the rain. His uniform had been replaced by a cheap suit that did not fit. His buzz cut had grown out into patchy, thinning hair. He would not look at the gallery. He could not. The gallery was full. On the left side sat the blue wall, supporters, police union reps, and family members holding signs that read, "Support our police." But the wall was thin. The FBI audit had been thorough. Half of the Jericho County Sheriff's Department was already under indictment or had resigned in disgrace. Sheriff Ramsey was noticeably absent. He had cut a plea deal and was currently testifying before a grand jury in another room. On the right side of the gallery sat the green wall. Khalil Stone sat in the front row. Next to him was Commander Gideon Holt. Behind them were 20 members of the SEAL teams, all in civilian clothes, but their presence was louder than any shout. Mira sat between Khalil and Holt. The prosecutor was, of course, Captain Lila Quinn. She had requested special permission to second chair the federal prosecutor, Robert Vance, a man known in legal circles as the butcher for his conviction rate. Crowe's defense attorney, a sweaty man named Lionel Poole, stood up to cross-examine Khalil, who was currently on the witness stand. "Mr. Stone," Poole began, trying to sound authoritative, "you admit that on the night in question, you were carrying a firearm, a legally registered firearm." "Yes," Khalil said calmly. "But you failed to inform the officer immediately," Poole pressed. "Don't you think Officer Crowe was justified in fearing for his life? A large man, late at night, in a high-crime area." Khalil leaned into the microphone. "I am a Tier 1 operator, Mr. Poole. If I had wanted to harm Officer Crowe, he would not have had time to fear for his life. He would simply have ceased to exist." The jury, a diverse group selected from 3 counties over, shifted in their seats. "Objection," Poole stuttered. "The witness is posturing." "Overruled," Judge Nolan Pierce said, looking over his spectacles. "You asked the question, Counselor." Poole wiped his forehead. "The defense contends that Officer Crowe made a mistake, a procedural error, not a hate crime, and certainly not a murder conspiracy. He arrested you because of the truck description." "Yes," Khalil said. "He did arrest me because of the truck, because he thought I was Jasper Reed." "Objection. Speculation." "I have the evidence." Captain Quinn stood up, holding a folder. "Your Honor, the prosecution would like to introduce Exhibit 44B into evidence." Judge Pierce nodded. "Proceed." Quinn walked to the center of the room. She placed a grainy photo on the projector. It was a text message thread recovered from Mason Crowe's personal cell phone. the one he had tried to smash when the SEALs landed, but which the FBI forensics team had pieced back together. The text had been sent shortly before Crow knocked on Khalil's door. It was sent to a number saved as Sheriff Cole. The text read, "The Ford is back at the Starlight. I think Reed's buddy is here, or maybe Reed faked it. Going to take him off the board tonight. No witnesses." The courtroom erupted. Poole froze. Crow put his head in his hands. "Order." Judge Pierce banged his gavel. "Order, or I will clear this court." Quinn turned to Crow. "You didn't think you were arresting a drug dealer, Mr. Crow. You thought you were finishing a hit. You thought Jasper Reed, the man you poisoned previously because he wouldn't take your bribe to run drugs in his truck, had survived, or that he had sent help." Quinn walked over to the jury box. Officer Crow saw a black man in a truck and saw two things: a threat to his criminal enterprise and a person nobody would miss. He was wrong on both counts. She turned back to Khalil. "Master Chief, what happened when you told him to call your team?" Khalil looked straight at Crow. He laughed. "He told me I was a nobody." Khalil paused, letting the silence hang heavy in the air. He forgot that in this country, nobody is a nobody. Every citizen has rights, and some citizens have backup. The trial lasted a few more weeks, but it was over in that moment. The defense crumbled. Sheriff Ramsey's testimony the following week was the final nail in the coffin. Ramsey admitted that Crow was the enforcer for a ring that moved narcotics through the motel, using confiscated trucks to transport the goods. Jasper Reed had refused to be a mule. So Crow silenced him. When the jury returned, they did not even look at Crow. "We find the defendant Mason Crow guilty on all counts," the foreman read. Crow did not cry this time. He simply stared blankly at the wall, the weight of his karma finally crushing the air from his lungs. He was not going to a county jail where his buddies could protect him. He was going to federal supermax. As the bailiffs shackled Crow, real shackles this time, heavy chains around his waist and ankles, Khalil stood up. He did not gloat. He did not cheer. He simply nodded at Crow. Crow looked up, eyes meeting Khalil's for the last time. In Khalil's eyes, Crow saw no hate, only pity. Pity for a man who had everything: authority, a career, a life, and threw it away because he was too small to be a good man. Khalil turned to Mira. She was weeping silently, holding the trident pin. "Is it over?" she asked. Khalil put his arm around her. "The war is over, Mira. Now we rebuild." Outside the courthouse, the press was waiting, a sea of microphones and cameras. They wanted a soundbite. They wanted the hero shot. Khalil walked past them. He walked straight to his truck, the same rusted Ford F-150. He had work to do. The foundation was not going to build itself. The wheels of justice grind slow, but when they are greased by the United States Navy and a federal civil rights lawsuit, they grind exceedingly fine. The criminal trial was only the first hammer blow. The second was the civil suit. Stone versus Jericho County. It was not a battle. It was a slaughter. With the corruption exposed, the county did not even try to fight. The settlement was historic. $45 million in damages for wrongful arrest, civil rights violations, and emotional distress, plus an additional undisclosed sum from the police union's insurance carrier. The entire Jericho County Police Department was dissolved by the state legislature, replaced by a new oversight committee and a contract with the state troopers until a vetted force could be built from scratch. But for Mason Crowe, money was an abstract concept now. His reality was concrete, specifically the 6 by 8 foot slab of concrete that was his new world at the ADX Florence Supermax facility. They did not put him in general population. Even the federal government knew that a dirty cop in a yard full of lifers would last about 30 seconds. So they gave him administrative segregation. It sounded bureaucratic and safe. In reality, it was a tomb. Crowe sat on the edge of his steel bunk. It had been a long time since he was processed. A long time of 23 hours inside, 1 hour in a solitary cage outside. No contact with other inmates. No phone calls to old buddies on the force who had all blocked his number long ago anyway. He looked at the wall. He had scratched a calendar into the paint with his fingernail. Why did I stop him? The question played on a loop in his mind, a torture worse than any physical beating. He replayed that night at the Starlight Motel 1,000 times a day. He remembered the rain. He remembered the truck. He remembered the feeling of power he had when he saw the black man opening the door. It was a drug, that feeling. The rush of knowing he could ruin a day or a life just because he wore a badge. He had thought he was the predator. He had thought he was the shark in the tank. He did not know he was swimming with a leviathan. "Ciao," a guard barked, sliding a tray through the slot in the heavy steel door. Crowe shuffled over. The guard did not look at him. To the guards here, Crowe was lower than the gang leaders and the terrorists. He was a traitor to the uniform, a cop who used his power to murder and frame. There is no brotherhood for those who stain the shield. Crowe took the tray. It was lukewarm meatloaf. He sat back down. He reached under his mattress and pulled out a crinkled piece of paper. It was a photocopy of a newspaper article his public defender had sent him. Maybe out of pity. Maybe out of spite. The headline read, "SEAL veteran Khalil Stone breaks ground on $20 million community center in Jericho." There was a picture. Khalil was smiling, holding a golden shovel. Standing next to him was Mira Reed, looking radiant in a Sunday hat. In the background, the skeleton of a massive building was rising from the very lot where the Starlight Motel once stood. Crowe stared at the photo. He had tried to bury that man. He had tried to bury the truth about Jasper Reed. And in doing so, he had elevated Khalil Stone to a folk hero and destroyed his own life. He looked at Khalil's eyes in the photo. Even in newsprint, they held that same calm, terrifying intensity. "Call my SEAL team," Crowe whispered to the empty cell. He realized now that Khalil had not been threatening him with violence that night. He had been offering him a chance to walk away, a chance not to be the villain in a story that would end with Crowe rotting in a concrete box. Crowe wept. Not for the first time, and certainly not for the last. The karma had not just hit him, it had swallowed him whole. He would spend the next 40 years in this box, remembering every second of the night he made the worst mistake of his life. Meanwhile, outside the prison walls, the world was moving on, and it was becoming a better place, specifically because Mason Crowe was no longer in it. Jericho County did not look like the same place. The roads were paved. The peeling clapboard houses in the hollows had been renovated or replaced with affordable, sturdy housing. The fear that used to hang over the town like a low fog, the fear of flashing blue lights in the rearview mirror, was gone. The new sheriff, a former Marine named Jenkins, walked the beat. She did not hide in speed traps. She knew the kids by name. She knew the shop owners. She had been handpicked by the Citizens Oversight Committee, a board chaired by none other than Khalil Stone. But the heart of the new Jericho was the building that stood at the entrance of the town. It was a masterpiece of modern architecture, glass and timber rising out of the earth. Above the grand entrance, etched in steel, were the words, "The Jasper Reed Veteran and Community Centre." It was opening day. The parking lot was full, not with police cruisers and news vans this time, but with families. Kids were running on the new soccer fields. Veterans from 3 different wars sat on the benches by the reflection pool, swapping stories. In the centre of the atrium, a massive crowd had gathered. Khalil Stone stood at the podium. He was older now. The grey in his beard was more pronounced, but he looked lighter. The burden of anger he had carried for so long had been transmuted into bricks, mortar, and hope. He wore a simple suit today. No medals, no uniform. Today he was just a citizen. Years ago, Khalil began, voice amplifying through the hall, "I came to this town to bury a brother." The crowd went silent. Mira, sitting in the front row, nodded. She was the director of outreach for the centre now. She had turned her grief into a crusade to save at-risk youth. "I came here expecting to find darkness," Khalil continued. "And I did. I found a darkness that hides behind authority, a darkness that judges a man by his paint job or his zip code. I was arrested a few hundred yards from where I'm standing. I was cuffed. I was told I was nobody." Khalil looked out at the crowd. He saw faces of all colours. He saw the new deputies standing respectfully at the back. "But darkness cannot drive out darkness," Khalil said, quoting Dr. King. "Only light can do that." And that night when I made a call, I didn't call for a rescue. I called for the light. A low rumble started overhead. Every head in the atrium turned upward toward the glass skylight. Hovering perfectly still above the building was a single MH-60M Black Hawk. It was not threatening this time. It was a salute. The side door of the atrium opened and they walked in. The team. Commander Gideon Holt, now a civilian with a limp but the same steely eyes. Sniper Ghost Ramirez. Medic Doc Reyes. The men who had fast-roped into the rain that night. They were not wearing tactical gear. They were wearing suits. They walked through the crowd shaking hands, high-fiving kids. Holt walked up to the podium and shook Khalil's hand. "You built a hell of a thing, Chief," Holt said, leaning into the mic. "Jasper would have loved it." "He does love it," Khalil said, looking at the large portrait of Jasper Reed hanging above the reception desk. "He's watching." Khalil turned back to the crowd. "This centre is for everyone," he said. "It has a legal clinic to fight for those who can't fight for themselves. It has a gym to build strong bodies. It has a library to build strong minds. But most importantly, it has a code." Khalil pointed to the plaque on the wall. "The code. 1. Protect the weak. 2. Stand for truth. 3. Never leave a brother behind." "We reclaim this ground," Khalil said, voice rising. "We took a place of trauma and turned it into a fortress of peace. Let this be a warning to anyone who thinks they can abuse their power. The eyes of the world are watching. And if you come for the innocent, if you come for the righteous, you better be ready for the storm. The crowd erupted in applause. Mira stood up and hugged Khalil. The team gathered around them. Outside, the sun was setting, casting a long golden glow over Jericho. Far away, in a cold cell, Mason Crow stared at the wall, a forgotten ghost of a time that was no more. But here, in the warmth of the center, life was beginning. Khalil walked out to the reflection pool. He looked at his reflection in the water. He did not see a victim. He did not see a suspect. He saw a man who had kept his promise. He took out his phone. He did not need to make a call, but he looked at the contact list anyway. The team. He smiled, pocketed the phone, and walked back inside to join his family. Wow, what a journey. From a rainy motel parking lot to a multi-million-dollar center for justice. Khalil Stone didn't just win a lawsuit. He dismantled a corrupt system and built a legacy that will last for generations. And that brings us to the real lesson of this story. True power isn't about the badge on your chest or the gun on your hip. It's about who you stand up for when the rain is pouring and nobody is watching. Officer Crow thought he had power, but all he had was a position. Khalil had purpose, and he had a brotherhood that extended far beyond blood. If this story got your heart racing, if it made you angry and then made you cheer for justice, do me a huge favor. Smash that like button right now. It helps us share these stories with more people. And listen, if you want more stories about karma hitting back, about heroes who don't wear capes but do wear dog tags, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We have a massive story coming next about a corrupt judge who messed with the wrong single mother. You do not want to miss it. Share this story with someone who needs to be reminded that justice is real. Thanks for watching. And as always, stay safe, stand tall, and watch your six. See you in the next one.